We're back with a bonus conversation you only see here on CBS News New York. So if Marianne Williamson was running for president, how would you decide, and if you got the nomination, how would you try to beat the Republicans?
Well, you know, I think that our friends on the other side are coming at us with some big lies. Not all of them, but I do think that Trump and DeSantis represent what I think of as some big lies. And the only way you defeat that is with some big truths. Now, what we call the...
First, tell me the big lies.
Huh? Well, the big lies have to do with the fact that the government is the problem and that the government doesn't owe anything to the American people. You know, our Declaration of Independence says that all men are created equal with inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Then it goes on to say that it is the role of the government. Governments are instituted to secure those rights. But the Republican Party and quite a bit of the Democratic Party has been hijacked by this perspective that we should be doing more to serve the profit maximization, short-term profit maximization of huge corporations than to serve the humanitarian and democratic goals of the American people.
What are the big truths that you're going to do to fight the Republicans?
Well, one of the things we need to do is to take an honest look at what has happened in this country. We need to do more than tell the truth. We need to do the whole truth and nothing but the truth. Over the last 40 to 50 years in this country, there has been a $50 trillion massive transfer of wealth into the hands of 1% of our people. The average American citizen should have the same rights that they have in every other advanced democracy: universal health care, tuition-free college, higher education and tech school, paid family leave, guaranteed sick pay, and a living wage. This is the truth. The truth is that our government now does more to serve its donors than to serve its people.
I have two words for you. Well, it's three words: Social Security and Medicare.
Okay.
We're running out of money. The Republicans want to eliminate it. As a Democrat, how would you fund it, and would you continue it?
You don't even touch it, and you remove the cap. Everybody should be paying into it. As far as Medicare is concerned, we should have Medicare for all. You know, there in every other...
How do you pay for all this?
Oh, please. We're paying for all these things now. Just so, it's not like the government is not spending money, but the government is spending its money on these multi-trillion-dollar wars, on a bloated military, on tax cuts for the very, very wealthy.
But isolationism isn't exactly the answer, is it?
Nobody's saying isolationism, and I had already mentioned that to you before. I'm certainly not an isolationist, but Americans need to realize, and I think people on the left and the right are realizing, the size of our military budget does not correlate with the level of our security. Now, when you were talking about Medicare for all, 1 in 4 Americans live with medical debt. 18 million Americans cannot afford to pay for the prescriptions that their doctors give them. In other countries, every other advanced democracy where they have universal health care, you don't have Americans rationing their insulin like we do here. You don't have people putting GoFundMe pages on the internet to pay for life-saving operations. You have 20% of Americans for whom the economy is working. You have 80% of Americans who live with chronic economic despair. This is not acceptable.
So I'd like to ask you, what's the best thing about being on the campaign trail?
The people. Talking to the people. There's a kind of political media industrial complex. It's not always fair, it's not always ethical, and sometimes it's quite corrupt. But when you talk to the voters on both left and right, the American people, there's a decency, there's a dignity, and there's an instinctive, people seem to have an instinctive understanding that America matters, and they do care. And that's why democracy matters. But right now we have a situation where, because of the almost legalized bribery in Washington, the voice of the people is not expressed as much as the voice of huge corporate entities.
So what's the worst thing about being in the campaign trail?
The lack of ethics among certain people in the media, who definitely have their allegiance to certain candidates and will do what they can, even to the point of character assassination, to get you out of there.
Are you saying that the journalists are not objective?
Shock! Shock! Who would have thunk it? I sure heck am.
So...
Not all of them. Not all of them. There are some who have...
What have you learned from campaigning?
That the system is even more corrupt than I feared, and the people are even more
Do you think that you're being treated that way because you're regarded as an outsider, not a Washington insider, because you're a woman?
Yeah, both, absolutely both. You know, there's this sense that if you're not in the political club, you don't even have a right to be here. But I reject the notion that those whose careers have been ensconced for decades in the car that drove us into this ditch are the only people we should consider qualified to drive us out of it.
So what do you do to unwind?
You know, when I can just like be alone, kind of maybe sit up in bed, you know, have either my computer, turn on TV, read a book, just not have to worry about being on. That's like the most delicious thing. And every once in a while I get to have that experience.
Who are your role models?
Oh, my role models. Well, certainly, I think my
Or who has inspired you?
Pardon?
Or who has inspired you?
Well, who inspired me politically are people like Martin Luther King Jr., actually Bobby Kennedy Sr., Abraham Lincoln, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Thomas Jefferson. On a personal level, my parents.
So what's the best piece of advice you've received?
Get over yourself.
Get over yourself?
Yeah, it's not about you. And in terms of it, I think that's a life principle. I think too many Americans are only thinking about ourselves. And I think that we recognize this has gone too far. There's a kind of rugged individualism that has become rugged narcissism in this country. We're living too atomized existences. We need to care for each other more. In terms of running, a friend of mine said to me at the beginning, keep your eyes on the light of the fire. And that's really important because there's so much distraction and there's so much noise and there's so much attack and smear and low-level, almost smut. You have to keep your eyes on the light of the fire. What matters here and why are you doing this? And as long as I do that, I'm fine.
Last question. If you could change one thing about yourself, what would it be?
I'd be taller.
Be taller?
Yeah, I'm a little one.
Okay.
Other than that, I'm okay. I mean, I certainly have my weaknesses like anyone else, but I hope that I'm on a path of self-improvement. I certainly try.
Thank you so much. We're going to have to leave it right there.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.